A new documentary has just premiered in New York exploring the impact and the importance of one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world, the Jewish community of Iraq, which dates back more than 2,700 years. The documentary chronicles the high-risk effort to save the Iraqi Jewish archives from being returned to Iraq, and it features a lot of prominent personal stories. Take a look at a clip from the documentary.
When you leave Baghdad, never talk about the stuff that happened. Don't talk about it at all. And she said, nobody wants to hear morbid stories because whatever happened was morbid. Nobody wants to know morbid. Nobody wants to hear morbid. I told her, but why? I want everybody to know what we've been through if we survive, if we get out.
With people that I don't know, I don't think I volunteer. I still don't volunteer to say I'm Jewish and Iraqi.
I said I was Jewish. She said, I was asked whether I spoke any Yiddish, and I said no. She said, what kind of a Jew are you? So I responded, do you speak Judeo-Arabic? She said, no. I said, what kind of a Jew are you? And I never forgot that incident.
And with me now is Carol Basri. She is an executive producer and a co-writer of the Saving the Iraqi Jewish Archives documentary. Carol, thank you so much for being with me. Many people don't know the story from almost 20 years ago, this Herculean effort to locate and then preserve the artifacts in Baghdad. Tell me more about that effort.
Well, first of all, I co-produced and co-directed the movie with Adriana Davis. She's been amazing. And this Herculean effort is really a series of miracles. We thought these archives were going to be lost forever. And frankly, the Jews, when they left Iraq, could only leave with 3 sets of clothing and 50 dinars. They came penniless wherever they went. So this was really a chance to have the archives from that time. They were found by Harold Rhodes. And the first miracle was that an informant from the Mukhabarat approached Ahmed Chalabi, the head of the Iraqi National Congress, who was the resistance to Saddam Hussein, and said, there are documents in the Mukhabarat headquarters, the secret police, and it's in the basement, but there's an unexploded bomb going in it. We have pictures of that, and you can see it going right in the window. It did not explode. It's still live, but it broke the water pipes, and there's water all over.
So, I mean, some of these artifacts go back 500 years or more. It was in a room in the secret police headquarters, yes, in the basement.
Yes.
And so what kind of things were found here?
Okay. Torahs dating down to 1617. There were Babylonian Talmuds. There were all kinds of books, including the books of the Ben Ish Chai, who was a very, very prominent rabbi from the turn of the 20th century, who is followed to this day and all over the world by Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. And this book, his notes were found because they saw that his handwriting matched by the Sephardic Heritage Museum in New York.
And over the years, a lot of these, archives, hundreds and hundreds of years old, they were lovingly preserved and restored in the United States. Now, is there a risk of them being returned to Iraq? Or does Iraq want them back? What could happen to these, really, these priceless artifacts?
First of all, Iraq does want them back. The U.S. says that it's planning to give them back in sometime in the next year, so by 2021. There is a big risk, and I really worry about them. It has to be preserved, but it also has to be accessible to Iraqi Jews. And right now, it's problematic to go to Iraq if you're known to be Jewish.
Why is it important to save these artifacts? I mean, I know the documentary touches at length about the power of this, but why is it important that these artifacts be saved and be accessible?
Because that's the only record we have of who we are. That's why it's an identity that's at stake. And many of these documents, I'm surprised that they would want, because they're school records from my grandfather's school, which is like an amazing coincidence because I made a documentary with Adriana. We co-produced that back in 1995, and it was on PBS, as a matter of fact.
Are you afraid that they want them back just so they can destroy them or hide them?
I don't know. I have been told that there is a chance that they will not survive from people fairly high up, because when they went to take over work with the archives in Iraq, they found a lot of the papers were going to be destroyed. And so I just think that the most important thing is that we don't allow this history to become a taboo history, because we have nothing to show tangibly that we ever lived there.
For the tens of thousands of families that were given hours to pick up and leave, tens of thousands within a day had to leave the only home they've ever known. And I know that in the documentary we played that clip where we hear some of the personal stories. To you, what is the power of hearing some of those personal stories from the grandchildren, great-grandchildren of some of these Iraqi families who had to flee?
Well, we have the people who actually fled, and they're trying to transmit this tradition to their children and grandchildren to the point where they're teaching them Judeo-Arabic. And yet, they have nothing. They have no cultural or religious objects. From 2,700 years, they don't have a Kiddush cup. That was in the family. And for me, my great-grandfather was the chief rabbi of Baghdad, Chacham Ezra Dangur. I never saw his prayer book, except somehow someone found one when I was 14 years old and gave it to my father. And this is the great-grandfather that raised my father, because his father died early. It was something to open that prayer book and see his picture there. I hadn't seen a picture.
And I know now that the documentary has just premiered in New York, an extraordinary film chronicling the preservation of these artifacts and what happens. It could be returned, as you mentioned, in a year. What is your message if there's if there are people watching? What is your message now?
Well, first of all, it's any time in the next year. And second, my message is that we need one of three things: an executive order from the president, or two, we need to make sure that there are carve-outs for Jewish material, so that other Jewish material doesn't get sent back, because that's part of what's talked about in the film. And the third thing is we've gotten resolutions, unanimous resolutions from Congress as late as July 2018, bipartisan. Everyone voted for it. But we didn't get legislation. We need a law that says it should stay. The Iraqi Jewish archives would be stolen 3 times if it was sent back. First, because the people had to leave it. Second, because it was taken to the Mukhabarat headquarters, the secret police headquarters. And now for the U.S. to send it back, that would be a third tragedy.
A really important work here and an important story that we are telling here. Saving the Iraqi Jewish Archives documentary just premiered. Carol, thank you so much for being with us and telling us about the work that you're doing.
And thank you to Adriana Davis for helping me in this effort and not making the history of the Jews from Arab countries who are ethnically cleansed disappear.